Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending, of course, on where you are joining us from. This is the EPN podcast. I am Jordan Abbott, an EPN ambassador, also known as the sales poet. If you've seen any of my LinkedIn content, you'll understand why that is. Now, this podcast has been designed to demystify the sales profession for anyone that's either considering a career in sales or has just embarked on their sales journey. Now, we're looking to remove some of the stigma that's surrounding the profession by talking to various sales leaders, finding out a little bit more about their journey in sales, and throughout that, they'll share some tips, tricks, and actionable insights throughout. Now, today, we are joined by Graeme Descoteaux. I hope I pronounced your surname right there, Graeme. Good stuff. So Graeme's worked in and led sales teams in both the B2C and the B2B environment within the travel, hospitality and tech sectors. Now, I've talked for long enough now, Graeme. So did you want to introduce yourself and just share a little bit more info?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jordan. Thanks for having me on. Graeme Descoteaux. I'm the director of sales here at Roomex. And we basically have an all-in-one hotel and expense management platform for the mobile workforce.
Fantastic. So I'm curious, how did you get started in sales? What intrigued you? What piqued your interest to pursue a career in this wonderful profession?
So I know it's going to sound like a massive cliche, but like a lot of people, it's something I fell into. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Went to uni and did a course that I wasn't really set on. Decided the uni wasn't for me and ended up managing a bar in Derby where I was at university. Then got the travel bug and 2008 decided to do a round the world trip. So I went to America, Fiji, New Zealand, Australia, and then I ended up skint like a lot of backpackers. So I needed to fund the rest of my travels and also fund going out and enjoying myself. So I ended up in Sydney. I got a direct sales job, which in essence was a door knocker job. And we've all kind of had the people around here knocking on our doors, but it was for the charity division, working on behalf of a teenage cancer charity. So I did that for a few months, got to kind of travel around Australia, which was great, and then got the opportunity to move to New Zealand. Some of that I'm really passionate about. It's quite similar to Scotland in a way in terms of the very picturesque and outdoors. So I moved to Christchurch and set up an office there and worked on behalf of Barnardo's and Save the Children. Now, it was 100% commission. So you see that's a lot of salespeople and they'll freak out. But it meant that I really had to kind of craft what I was doing and get good at it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any money. So I had to make it work. And then about a year and a half later, I moved back to the UK. It was time to come home and ended up getting a job for STA Travel. And it was because something I was good at, which was sales, and something I was really passionate about, which was travel. So combining the two together was the right fit for me.
That's incredible. I love the story about the door-to-door sales. I've been there myself, although unfortunately it wasn't for such a worthy cause. I was just trying to flog Wi-Fi. Learned a lot, mainly how not to sell. It was a great time. Now, throughout those early days, what were some of the challenges that you faced and how did you manage to overcome them?
Yeah, I think particularly with the first sales role, which was door to door, building rapport was so crucial because you're knocking on someone's door and they're thinking, who is this, tall Scottish guy with glasses and what does he want? So really finding that common ground and interest with the person you're speaking to and not just be seen as selling something to them. Look at kind of breaking down the barriers of the sale really and feeling like they're not being sold to. And then the second kind of point was really working the numbers. So especially with that type of sales, it was, working the law of averages and, they say you've got a deck of 52 cards and you have to turn the cards over to find the aces. So specifically in kind of Australia, New Zealand in that sales job, it was working the numbers, but then kind of developing into kind of more of a smart selling when I was back in the UK in my current roles.
Nice. Yeah, I think having the ability having the data, being able to report religiously, not only does it give you the visibility over, what are those levers that I need to pull to influence that next stage, but it also gives you that belief on those really tough days where it just seems nothing is going right. It's that sort of guiding light. Okay, things are going to get better. At least if the data's right.
Yeah. And it's resilience as well. Like, you're getting a lot of no's as you do in sales, but there will be a yes at the end of it. So it's kind of carrying on and going forward to find that yes or find that sale.
Indeed. Now, on that point that we do get a lot of no's, we do, essentially we're the front line for any business. We're the single most important connection to a business's customers, which is fantastic because we get all that insight. But additionally, we also typically feel the brunt of any market changes, any changes in buyer behaviors. Now, I'm curious, have you got any best practices that you've picked up and that you would encourage in your teams to ensure that you're able to stay adaptable and be consistently successful throughout those periods of dramatic change?
Yeah, and I think a quote that kind of comes to mind is that you can't be an analog seller in a digital world. And that is so true, because you kind of have to embrace the change and adapt to what's going on in the industry. It's very fast paced, so you have to be kind of ever evolving. And one of the things obviously that we connected originally was video. So video was very new to me, and I remember watching a couple of I think it was actually Ginny who kind of first kind of saw on LinkedIn, who kind of introduced me to it. And I remember them saying that once you get over the fact that you hate your face, and you don't have to have the perfect video, you can kind of cut through the noise and be more human, and that gets a really good response from prospects out there. And just off the back of that as well, it's being consistent and carrying it through, because it is awkward and it's uncomfortable the first time, but it's so powerful and it does work.
Yeah.
And the second point I was going to say was just around relationships. And I know you had Becky O'Shea, I think, in your first podcast, and she kind of referred to this. But again, going back to not treating someone as a sale and showing them that you care and that you can solve their problem, and really kind of looking to add value, and to double back to the prospect when the time's right, or perhaps in a different role of business if they're not ready to buy right then, and really kind of value and nurture those relationships. So, definitely those two are kind of the key points in my career, certainly.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the old adage of people buy from people, it's so true. And somewhere along the line, it feels like a lot of sales orgs have lost the essence of that as they drive for efficiency. And in relation to the video, it was actually Ginny that got me onto the video as well. So we have that in common.
He's also making some good commission then, that's for sure.
Indeed. Bro. So one of the questions that I'm really keen to ask is surrounding the impacts of COVID. Now, I think it impacted a lot of businesses, but for yourself, you recently just joined Roomex, working within the sort of corporate travel space. I'm sure that presented a lot of unique challenges. So curious to hear a little bit more about those, and how did you overcome them? How did you manage that period of just unique challenges?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we all kind of share similar stories, but before Roomex, I was at a company called Late Rooms, which people might remember in the UK, and it went into administration. So I was left without a job, and our firstborn was due in November, so that was kind of scary time. And then started Roomex, and the year later, obviously, COVID happened. So, like a lot of companies, they downsized, reduced the sales team, the marketing team, and they slowly kind of built it back up. So for me, what kind of got me through was really having a strong pipeline in that time, forward thinking, and the old kind of saying that you're only as kind of as good as your next opportunity, like, what is next after this, not just kind of having those blinkers on, and developing kind of good solid foundations as well. So, not just thinking about the sale, but the longevity of the client and for the business. You are ultimately the first impression of that business or that company that you're working for. So, make it lasting for the right reasons. And you touched on something there, which, people buy from people. If they buy into you, they'll buy from you. And it's that simple. So it's really having those relationships, connections, and obviously sharing stories, because we all went through it. Some people had it a lot worse than others, but it's something we shared as a race, I guess, human race. It's something that was scary and we all had to deal with in different aspects. So, just kind of leveling with people and obviously talking through how we can help now.
Yeah, indeed. It's a really great point about always having one eye on the quality of pipeline that you've got. I think as an AE, it can be so easy when you're managing various sales cycles to let that slip, and then you're going to be paying for it the next month, the next quarter, the next year. So it's really trying to balance that. Now, in terms of best pieces of advice that you've been given throughout your career, are there any standouts?
So I'm gonna hit you with another quote. So people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Which I think I had to look this up because it's always one I use, but it was by Theodore Roosevelt, which was the 26th US president. Not that I'm into politics, but I like the quote. But I guess that kind of resonated with me because it is about being passionate, both within your industry, believing in what you are selling and solving the prospects' problems, really, helping them overcome the main issue, which is why you're speaking to them. And ultimately adding value. Like, we're there to obviously add some sort of value, either to themselves, to the business, but be seen as someone who can help them, not someone who can sell to them.
Yeah, I love that quote. I'm going to steal that from you, Graeme.
It's on your wall. You can put it on your wall behind you. Isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. It's got his place up there. Yeah, it's a really good point. I think that passion and authenticity that comes from the natural passion, one, it gives you a clear conscience because you believe in what you sell, but it's almost infectious. It can be, so that's brilliant. Now, throughout your career, you've had quite a varied sort of sales experience. Are there any habits or best practices that you've picked up that remain consistent in terms of personal and professional growth?
Yeah, so I think definitely back to kind of AE and sales managers days, being organized is absolutely key. We talk about being a busy idiot. So for me, I always used to have a daily structure where I'd plan for each prospect. So the first kind of 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes of my day, I'd use to kind of, look what's going ahead or what's happening tomorrow, because there's nothing worse than coming into your day and you suddenly got all these tasks, all these cadences that you have to run, and you're thinking, oh God, where you see like an email pop up and suddenly you have to kind of go to that email. So having a structure in place and being organized, which is ultimately, the key for success from my eyes. And the last one is, just don't give up. Obviously we face a lot of objections, and I think this kind of learned from my door knocking days that, they're only kind of one step closer to a yes. And I know that sounds terribly cheesy, but it is true. And it might be like trying a different angle. It might be multi-threading. I had a lot of success reaching out to a booker, for example, and they said, no, we're not interested. We're fine. It's in how we're doing things at the moment. You try a different angle. You speak to the DM, the CFO, the MD, and then suddenly 2 months later, you're working with that company. So it's not giving up from that side. And allow more time. Like, I think we're so kind of haste in terms of getting the sale or getting the transaction done, but often the buyer might not be ready. So it's about nurturing that relationship and then coming back to a later date. Because again, we talk about closed, lost opportunities and ones we've kind of resurrected and won. That is so prevalent in our industry and makes ultimate success for people in sales.
Yeah. Oh, just on that multi-threading piece, I think it's something that is at the forefront of a lot of sales enablement leaders' mind. I was recently at a high spot enablement breakfast, and it was a topic that kept coming up purely because what we're seeing as a result of the economic uncertainty is businesses are looking to mitigate risk involved in an investment. So they're increasing the size of those decision-making units. But at the minute, I think Gartner says between 6 and 10, McKinsey 9 to 10, Korn Ferry 6.2, something along the lines of that. Is there a magic number for you in terms of how many people within an account you should be reaching out to and building relationships with?
No, but I mean, interestingly, there never is one decision maker. And, we see that time and time again. And the ones we do progress, you end up losing the opportunity down the line because, someone else that should have been involved in the process has a different pain or a different problem that we've not overcome or we've not covered with them. Yeah. So I'd say that, there is no magic number, but, really kind of thoroughly doing your qualification and, understanding, okay, well, who has impact in this business in terms of what we're going to onboard or what we're going to present to the client. And making sure that we're speaking to them because, use the analogy that, once you kind of get further down the sales process, it's like climbing up a waterfall. Like, it's so hard to then kind of double back and start the sales process again, because ultimately you've got a blocker or someone said no. Whereas if we kind of overcome that and got them involved at the start of the journey, life would be a lot easier. So it's not giving yourself extra work. It's, making sure you kind of do your due diligence at the start, and, really kind of making sure that you're finding out every single decision maker and stakeholder who's going to be involved in the sale.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, last question. What advice would you give to a young Graeme, or to anyone that is considering a career in sales or very early on their sales journey?
Yeah, good question. So I think for me, kind of two angles is that the first one would be, be willing to take a step back to take a step up. I kind of did that on my career from moving to late rooms. I used to manage the whole kind of corporate side of the business. And, I think you really need to kind of get in and pull your sleeves up and learn that business and, sell ultimately, because no matter if you're a director or a manager or a team lead, like, we all do it because we love the sale and we love the thrill of selling. So, that is always going to be embedded in a salesperson. And then the second point really is that don't be afraid to call yourself a salesperson. As a kind of hiring manager, there's so many people that will call themselves an account manager. And okay, there's a lot of crossover between account management and sales, but be proud of being a salesperson. Like, it's not the kind of stigma of being a Dell boy or being a car dealer. It is a really great industry and something that people can do really well from. So, be proud to be a sales manager and shout about it when you're applying for jobs.
Yeah, I love that. It's weird. I'm not sure at what point it happened, but there was a shift, wasn't there, where any sales role dropped salesperson became account executive, account management, business development rep. Yeah, it's a really good point. Love that, Graeme. Thank you so much for joining me today. That's been a great session. Where is it for people to reach out to you if they want to?
LinkedIn, obviously on LinkedIn, not as kind of prominent as yourself and doing the good work. But yeah, obviously Roomex.com is our company website. But feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm sure you tagged me on the posts. So more than happy to talk to people and connect to the network.
Perfect. Appreciate it, Graeme. I hope you have a fantastic day. And to our listeners, until next time.
Thanks, Jordan.